My name is Danny Lichtenfeld. I'm the director of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. On behalf of all of us associated with the museum, let me say how delighted we are to have you all here. Tonight's talk has been generously sponsored by Marlborough College and Vermont Artisan Designs. And I'm pleased to acknowledge and thank Ellen McCulloch-Lovell, president of Marlborough College, who's here tonight. Thank you, Ellen. I also extend our gratitude to Greg Worden, owner of Vermont Artisan Designs, who had a prior engagement but stopped by earlier to wish us well. Tonight's honored guest is in fact no guest at all, because he, as much as anyone alive, should feel at home in this place. Wolf Kahn is a former board member of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. He's an honorary trustee and a valued advisor. His artwork has graced these walls on more than one occasion, including in 2006, when we presented a major solo show entitled Landscape of Light, which featured paintings created over a span of 5 decades. Wolf Kahn is widely regarded as one of the most important colorists working in America today. Born in Germany, Wolf emigrated to the United States by way of England in 1940. After graduating from the High School of Music and Art in New York City, he spent time in the Navy. And under the GI Bill, he studied with the well-known teacher and abstract expressionist Hans Hofmann, eventually becoming Hofmann's studio assistant. After receiving his baccalaureate degree from the University of Chicago in just 1 year, Wolf joined with other former Hofmann students to establish the Hansa, a cooperative gallery where he had his first one-man show. He's received a Fulbright Scholarship, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and an award in art from the American Academy of Art and Letters. He's a member of the National Academy of Design as well as the Academy of Art and Letters. There's a much longer list, but as Wolf pointed out to me before I stepped up here, if I were going to go through it all, my talk would be longer than his. Wolf has created landscape paintings all around the world, but in the summer and fall, he's to be found in West Brattleboro, where Wolf and his wife, Emily Mason, have lived on a hillside farm since 1968. Wolf regularly exhibits at galleries and museums across North America. His work is held in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Whitney Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, the Hirshhorn Museum, and the Los Angeles County Museum, among many others. Ultimately, though, it's not the resume, but the art itself that matters. And as we all know, trying to describe the art in words is a fool's errand, so I won't do it. Instead, I'll close with a quote from John Updike, who said, "Wolf Kahn brings the hot, pure color of abstract expressionism to an idea of landscape that is tranquil, reflective, and witty. His images keep a sense of place and moment, though what strikes us first is their gorgeousness." With that, would you please welcome Wolf Kahn.
Happiness is a full hall. Thank you all for coming. Let me see if I can reach the far corners just by not having this thing stuck in my mouth. Can you all hear me? No? Okay, then I better stick it in my mouth. Now you can hear me? Better? Okay, because I think it's foolishness to give a lecture which people can't hear. Another thing I may ask you is, I'm getting to the age where words fail me. Like, for example, I was looking for the word, wait a minute, which word was it again? I got it here somewhere. Yes, subversive, and I had in my mind, I had surreptitious and subjunctive and all kinds of things like that, and subversive just wouldn't come forward. And these things happen to me. So whenever I'm at a loss for a word, you have to supply it for me, okay? And this is also a very good device to keep people's attention. I noticed this in Germany. I gave a talk in Hamburg where they gave me a show in the museum. And in Germany, they make speeches at every opportunity. So, the culture minister came, the Bürgermeister came, the director of the museum came, and each made a speech, and then they looked at me expectantly. So I got up, and I said, you don't want to hear me speak German because I speak the German of a 12-year-old, because that's how old I was when I last lived here. Says, but then I'll try it anyway. It's good for my character. And if a word fails me, all of you speak English, so you'll have to help me. So everybody goes forward like they're hoping that a word would fail me, so that they could be helpful and be part of the proceedings. Well, so words are going to definitely fail me, and I need your help. The next thing is that I'm going to be speaking, I really don't know quite how long, but if it starts dragging on, like to be more than 10 minutes, then you must immediately encourage me to stop so we can go to the question and answer period. Question and answer period really brings out the best in me, because people, especially if people ask impertinent questions, like for example, I gave a lecture once and somebody asked me, the reason you paint those barns is because they sell, isn't it? So I spent a half an hour self-justifying and rationalizing, why I wasn't painting barns in order to sell them. And people still didn't believe me, of course. But I must assure you that I'm pure as the driven snow. Okay, now to the subject, special. What is it to be special? I mean, we're all brought up to think that we're special. And sometimes people are special. There's a wonderful book by a New York School poet named Kenneth Koch, I guess his name would be here in America, which is called Wishes, Lies, and Dreams. And it describes a class that he had for 6- and 7-year-olds in poetry, to make them write poetry, And then he had the best ones that he liked, he reproduced in the book. And he also, during the class time, I guess, had the kids read them to the other kids. But he wrote in the book, be sure that the poems that you read are really special. Because if they turn out not to be special, then everything's special. And if everything's special, then nothing's special. So I think it's a good idea to restrict oneself to what's really special, And of course, artists, some of them are special, some of them are not special, I happen to be among the artists who are special. And why is this? I tell you why. It's because of my grandma. My grandma, seeing that I stayed out of trouble by drawing all the time, gave me art materials and had me sit in my room drawing. And then when she saw that I really, started making progress, she would say to me, save the best drawings you make, and I'll have you come in and show them to the bridge ladies. And so of course I did. I couldn't wait for the maid to come in and say, your grandmother wants you to come in and show those drawings to the bridge ladies. So I went in and the bridge ladies predictably said, oh and ah. And at the end of all of this, I got a piece of the same cake that the bridge ladies got. And that was the high point of my week. and since then, I've been at great pains to get in a situation where I'm special. And of course, most of the time, you can't find situations like that because you're surrounded by other people who want to be just as special as you are and usually more successful at it than you are. So you have to find some kind of a way of proving that you are. So in high school, I used to make caricatures of the teachers in white chalk on the blackboard while we were waiting for the teachers to come in. And I was pretty good at getting resemblances, and some of them were vicious. And the worse they were, the more the students were anticipating the entrance of the teachers. And of course, the teachers had to be good-tempered about it. They couldn't just throw me out into the hallway or make me stand in the corner. So I got a lot of kudos for making these drawings, So that made me feel, like I say, that I continue to feel that I was special. Now, at this point, it gets more and more difficult, and especially since now, one of the things that happens to you when you're brought up this way, you sort of get the feeling that the world is not what it should be when people aren't making a fuss over you. And so that you have to either be a lecturer, which I am about 3 times a year, or else a teacher. Teachers, immediately gain the attention of their class. So I've always enjoyed teaching very much because that makes me feel special, But by and large, as an artist, to be special, you have to go a little further than just to teach or to give lectures. I mean, there has to be something in your work that grabs people. And I really don't know quite what it is in my work that grabs people. Because, for one thing, I don't really want to know what it is, because that would make me feel that I was doing market research, And as an artist, you're not allowed to do that, As an artist, you're meant to be born fresh every day to do your work, so that you're not copying yourself, you're not being a manufacturer, you're having to be, like I say, pure as the driven snow, which of course nobody is. Your work is always depending upon work you've done before, upon work you've seen elsewhere that you've liked. In fact, Ernest Gombrich, the British art historian, said that all art is 80% other people's art. And I think 80% is a very conservative figure, because I think we're so dependent on each other in this thing, Even the materials you use, they're all materials that everybody knows about, the brushes, the paints, the canvas, and so forth, paper. And there's been centuries of work to get those materials to the point where you can use them now and get good results on them, Even now, when it comes to colors, every now and then somebody comes up with a new color, some manufacturer. Well, every time a new color comes out, it's like I'm reborn, because it means that I can go out and use this thing, which I've never used before, and get results which will surprise me, and just generally be a special artist. So I thank all the predecessors who've come before me, who've allowed me to be to stand before you now, and after a lifetimes of work. Another thing that makes an artist different from other people is you don't ever have to take any orders from anybody. In fact, you're not allowed to take orders, you know. I mean, every now and then you can do a commission, but even when you do a commission, you have to be very careful not to listen to what the person wants. Because that might impale upon the purity of the impulse. And being born afresh in front of a commission, let's say somebody's modernistic house or something like that, that you're supposed to paint, is very difficult. So you're best off not taking commissions, and doing all your work, as they say, on spec, you know, which means that you do it and you're hoping that somebody's going to like it, you know. But even that you're not allowed to worry about. If you start worrying about whether people are going to like your work, you're already corrupt, you know. You just have to do your work and hope for the best. Of course, that makes it more and more, for a while, when you're first out of art school, makes it very difficult, because a student fresh out of art school, nobody likes their work, you know, except their parents and their aunts and uncles. But the general public usually doesn't give a hang. So you have to get through that period and still keep your morale up. Well, at that point, this idea of being special that my grandmother was at such great pains to imbue me with is very helpful. Because if nobody else thinks you're special and you think you're special, that's a helpful thing, you know. Because if nobody thinks you're special and you don't think you're special, you might as well forget it, you know. All right. Now, what kind of person does it require to be that special artist? You know, who doesn't listen to anybody and who keeps up their morale. When I was in high school, one of my best friends was a man named Allan Kaprow. How many people here have heard of that name, Allan Kaprow? Oh, a lot of you. Okay, good. Nobody on this side, though. Okay, good, 3. Well, anyway, Allan Kaprow is a culture hero. And because he invented happenings. And happenings are things that where nothing is more important than anything else. You know, for example, he used to have these things where he invited people to come. Somebody was painting, somebody else next to the painting was bouncing a basketball, somebody else next to that was singing a song, and there was an audience of people sitting, watching all this going on. And I think what Allan was at great pains to show is there should be no distinctions. No distinctions. And the reason he said all that, thought all that, was because he didn't really know how to draw, you know. And the best way to get around that is to make an end run and say that drawing doesn't count, art doesn't count, and the whole structure of the art world is a mess and should be ignored. So what he did is he invented these happenings, and he was invited to different colleges and universities. In one of them, for example, he had a Volkswagen that was totally covered with raspberry jam, and he had invited the students to lick off that jam, and that was one of the happenings. But when we were in school together, he was still trying to learn to draw. And I was a hotshot draftsman, so I always had a lot of I was looking down my nose at Allan. And I took it for granted that I was the big shot and he was nobody, you know, just my friend. And then I was invited to his house. And in his house, they had Jewish cooking. And Jewish cooking, as those of us around here who are Jewish know, is indigestible. So, and in addition to being indigestible, Allan's father, who was a self-made man, lawyer, would say to Allan, see, look at Wolf now. He gets good grades. He gets along with the teachers. Why can't you? You know, well, Allan was a naturally subversive type. You know, he just was a rebel to begin with, to start out with. And he was proud of not being able to get along with the teachers, you know. And then he went and stayed with a modernist composer whose daughter was his girlfriend, Stefan Volpe. And then he invited me to go visit them, and I just out of art school, and I was full of important questions like, what's more important, form or content? You know, and Stefan Volpe looked at me pityingly and says, that does not interest me. So I figured, gee, you know, I better make my peace with the fact that I keep asking questions that don't interest people. So I finally figured out what I really am is a traditionalist, and what Allan is a subversive artist. And in the climate in which we lived in those days, and unfortunately still live today, to be a subversive artist is much more important than to be a good artist. And to be a traditional artist may be useful for an income, but it's not useful for getting a tremendous amount of attention, you know, because everybody's used to that art, especially the critics. The critics, they've seen so much good art that to see one more guy come along, one more person come along, and do further examples of good art, they get bored. You know, it's like the movie critic at the New Yorker. You have to read those criticisms with a lot of grain of salt, because all these critics, they've seen so many movies that they don't like any of them anymore, you know. And the only ones they still like are the ones that are so outrageous and so far out and so far off the beaten track that they demand their attention. And for them, they have a good critique. You know, when I go to I used to read Pauline Kael, who gave a moralistic slant to her film criticism. And I'd go see the movies that she liked, and I never liked them, you know, because I don't see very many movies. And all I have to do is just see a bunch of cowboys chasing a bunch of Indians, and I'm happy. Because I don't hardly ever see that, you know. Well, but those people, they've seen it over and over and over again, and something strange has to happen, like the Indians have to be homosexuals, or the cowboys do, and then all of a sudden it becomes interesting, you know, and they can write long things about that movie. Anyhow, to go back to the subject, which I've gotten away from somehow. Let me see, where was I? Yeah, so anyway, what is it, what defines an artist's specialness, aside from the fact that he's either a traditionalist or a subversive artist? And, well, I think one of the things that defines specialness is a capacity for spontaneity. You've got to sort of be able to see the world fresh, and to see it in such a way that everything you learned in art school goes out the window. and that you're doing things that are sort of on the edge of disorder. You know, disorder is a wonderful thing. Goethe, the German poet, said, "Disorder is the of the imagination." Anyway, you don't know German, so you can't help me. But he loved disorder, you know, even though he wrote, of course, perfectly reasonable poetry. In fact, wonderful poetry. One of the things that he said, which we should all remember, is that is a line. He says, "Wer nicht mehr liebt und nicht mehr irrt, der hat sich selbst begraben." He says, "He who no longer loves and he no longer makes mistakes might as well have buried himself." So every time I make a mistake, I try to think of Goethe. So I think of Goethe from morning till night. But to go back to the spontaneity thing, is as soon as you start thinking too much about what you're doing, spontaneity goes out the window. So it's very important to be ignorant and to be a bit stupid. As I think I started the lecture 2 years ago that I gave here, saying that you have to be stupid to be an artist, didn't I? Seems to me. A question, actually. There's a story about a lady with white tennis shoes that did I tell you that story 2 years ago? No? Old lady with white tennis shoes? No? Okay, I'll tell it to you this time then. Because I'm deathly afraid of repeating myself. You know, because there's nothing more boring than to hear the same things over and over again. It's nothing more boring than to see pictures that you've seen before over and over again. That's why, like a magazine like American Artist, or those magazines that tell you how to paint foliage, and how to do certain things, and how to be creative, you know, and so on. They should all be thrown out because they don't help you at all to be spontaneous, you know. It's spontaneity can be defined as a certain innocence of spirit. Innocence of spirit. That's a wonderful phrase, because William Butler Yeats, he made the phrase the ceremony of innocence. And I do believe that, and also there's an American hymn. "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free." Yeah, and there's the idea of the idea of a certain amount of innocence is implied there. But anyhow, I was teaching, just to give you an example. An innocence of spirit and expertise are enemies. You know, they're at opposite poles. If you're an expert, that means you already know how to do it. And how is that going to help you to be spontaneous? You know, it won't. Let me tell you about this lady with the white tennis shoes. I was teaching in Maine, and we were outside. There was outside there was water, and there was trees, and there was a sailboat and things like that. So this lady comes in with a piece of paper that had a triangle sewn on it, of paper. And I looked at that, and I said, I must just stay clear of her. There's something wrong here. You know, I mean, what's she trying to prove? So then I saw her put a whole lot of lines of pastel across the paper, and the lines of pastel got to be so they were like three-dimensional. You know, you can keep building up pastel if you put enough of it on. So she had these lines of three-dimensional pastel going across the paper. So at a certain point, she took that triangle and stood it up. And it turned out to be a sailboat going through the waves. And nobody told her, you know, how to do that. That was entirely her idea of what she wanted to do. So I called her, I said, you're an art saint because you do things right for the right reasons, and you're not constrained by prior knowledge. You just somehow let your imagination go free, and you use the art materials to give expression to this free imagination, which is art sainthood. And I said, I'll never be an art saint. I know far too much. You know, I would never do anything like that. But I can't help but reflect upon this. And I'd wish somebody would write a book, you know, instead of teaching you how to paint foliage, would teach you to be an art saint, you know. But it's very difficult to write a book on that, you know, because it requires on the part of the writer a whole new language. Like, for example, what I said to Stefan Volpe, my question is what's more important, form or content? That's the opposite of art sainthood. It's art pseudo-sophistication, you know, where you're using these academic terms that really in essence don't mean anything. What does content mean apart from form? You know, unless form and content present themselves as a unit, you're not even doing it right to begin with. You know, that lady with her sailboat, form and content presented themselves inextricably united. But I'm sure as soon as I turned my back and she went to another teacher, he would have told her that's all wrong. You know, I'm the only one I'm the Pope of art sainthood, and I don't have a college of cardinals that I have to consult, so I'm very lucky. Well, which means to go back to the larger picture. Who else is an art saint? Well, the abstract expressionists were art saints because they found out that all you had to do is make a brushstroke of a certain color against another brushstroke of a certain color, or an area of certain color, and you'd have something. You'd have something that your imagination can feast on. And strangely enough, Andy Warhol is an art saint, although I hate his work. But the whole idea, for example, what he did that convinced me that he was great is, he had this group of queer people that he attracted and that he used in his films. So what he did, he got up on this big camera that he had, and he told them to play to the camera. So they all started, you know, going crazy in front of the camera. He, however, had another camera from the side, you know, that was invisible, where just the lens went through this curtain, shooting these people going crazy in front of the camera, you know. And he shot that, and it was like a Copernican revolution, you know. It was something that was unheard of and unthought of hitherto. And it also showed the soft underbelly of the American dream, which he was very interested in exposing all the time, you know. The idea of the celebrity, that he made all these pictures of these icons. There's Jackie, there's Mao Zedong, and so forth, because he knew that people already cared about those guys, you know, those people, and would be attracted to pictures about them. Then he made a picture where he had 8 reproductions of an electric chair, you know, that he made silk screens on a canvas, eight electric chairs, identical next to each other. You know. Well, he knew that people crazy about electric chairs, you know, for some strange reason. But we all are. We all want to have feelings. An electric chair elicits feelings, and Andy Warhol knew how to elicit these sort of common floating anxieties and worries and enthusiasms that the whole American population is involved with. So anyway, are we anywhere near 45 minutes? What we I mean, and of course, another thing that Andy Warhol knew is that the critics, they're really not interested in traditional work at all. They're interested in these departures, these wild people who do things that are subversive and haven't been done before and seen before, and that seem to reflect courage. And they do reflect courage, because, you know, a guy who starts painting a single Campbell soup can in the middle of a canvas and saying that's a painting, he's a courageous guy, you know, you can't take that away from him. You know. Then he did another thing, is he asked, he made just 2 Brillo boxes and exhibited them in a gallery and say it's sculpture. Well, who's to say it's not sculpture, you know? Because after all, there was a French artist named Duchamp who took a urinal, you know, nice white ceramic urinal, put it on a pedestal and called it Fountain. Well, that gained people's attention, and he kept on doing other things like that. Another artist at that same period took a teacup and lined it with fur, and exhibited it as the fur-lined teacup. Well, there again, you're upsetting people's expectation, because who wants to drink tea out of a fur-lined cup? So anyway, like, one of the things that subversive artists do is to upset people's expectations, and that makes them special. What I do, there's a painting of mine hanging right there, big one in the middle. I had them put it in the middle because I figured, you know, I'm going to be standing in front of it. Might as well advertise the. So anyway, the thing is that I give people lots of entry into my paintings, you know, because they've all seen those kind of paintings before, and I'm just hoping, probably hoping against hope, that there's something in those paintings that's novel, that's new. Of course, I can't guarantee it. Just because I haven't seen it before doesn't mean that the critics haven't seen it before, and they have seen it before, because I'm always being told that I'm like Bonnard, or I'm like Avery, or I'm like somebody else. But in the case of Andy Warhol, they couldn't say that, you know, because he was the first one to paint a Campbell soup can in the center of a canvas, small, right size, you know, surrounded by all this empty canvas. So, but anyway, the thing is, there's 2 kinds of artists, and I'm not sure which kind I belong to. There's the artists who are special, and then there's the artists who are just soldiers in the ranks. And I've spent all my life trying to prove that I'm not just soldier in the ranks, but I still don't know which group I belong to. And thank God that you're all here, because that gives me sort of a feeling that maybe I'm not just a soldier in the ranks. You know, if the hall were half empty, I'd feel that much more. And so you're all doing a lot for my morale. But anyway, I don't think one has to judge oneself. One just does one's work and hopes for the best. And above my studio, I have a motto written, and it says, "I just work here." Thank you. Okay, now I'm ready to answer any question that you have. Yes.
What kind of marks did you get from the teachers in caricature as a kid?
Oh.
Well, could you also repeat the question?
What kind of marks did I get from the teachers that I caricatured? Well, actually, I went to a high school that was special in music and art. It was called the High School of Music and Art in New York. And if you made a good caricature, they didn't dare not to give you a good mark. Yes?
For a truly special artist, is art school necessary?
Depends. It depends. I mean, clearly that lady with a sailboat didn't need to go to art school to have that idea, you know. And there's other people that come up with crazy ideas that then people look at and think they're wonderful. Like, for example, Van Gogh. Of course, Van Gogh arrived at the way he painted, which was very revolutionary at the time. He arrived at it by starting out being a totally traditional Dutch landscape painter. You know, not using bright colors, painting trees that grow in Holland, that, you know, all those poplar trees with their branches cut off in order to use those branches in ovens, bread ovens, and he painted all that. And then very slowly became more and more outrageous, you know, until toward the end of his life. Of course, everybody knew Van Gogh, but nobody would ever spend any money on it because it was too outrageous. It was too far ahead of its time. And even Cézanne, who of course also knew about Van Gogh, he was asked what he thought about the work of Van Gogh. And he says, "I'm not interested in the work of madmen." You know, and that's the way his work was received at the time, except by a few very advanced spirits. You know. Now, advanced spirits, there again, that's a loaded term. What is advanced spirits? Is there anybody sitting in this audience who think of themselves as an advanced spirit? Nobody. What a humble group of people.
It's everybody's secret.
Everybody's secret.
It's everyone's secret.
Yes.
They're keeping that secret to themselves, all of us.
Yes, well, but you're not considered an advanced spirit unless you keep company with other advanced spirits. That's the thing about Allan Kaprow, about whom I spoke, is he started keeping company with these people that were really ahead of their time, you know, and I had to bow down in front of his prescience that it was far easier to gain fame and fortune by being that kind of a person in this climate today than to do my kind of thing. You know, although I've gained fame and fortune, but I'm still alive and Alan's dead. Barely. Yes. Could you talk a little louder?
I know the subversive artists have been very popular for years. Do you think the traditional artists are going to get that same wave of, could they become subversive artists?
Can traditional artists become subversive artists? I have a strong feeling it's unlikely. You know, I mean, in Van Gogh's time, it was much more likely because to be a subversive artist in those days, really, you took a tremendous chance. Today, to be a subversive artist, you don't take any more of a chance than if you're a traditional artist, you know. Huh? To be a traditional artist. To be a subversive artist. Yeah, I think it's boring, but on the other hand, a lot of people don't, you know. And like, you know, what was George O'Keeffe, for example? Was she subversive or traditional? Well, she lived at a very good time where those distinctions didn't mean very much, you know. Yes.
How common do you think it is for artists to have their feeling of specialness contain a large element of arrogance and disrespect for people who are less special than themselves?
I think arrogance and conceit and disrespect are extraordinarily important. Without them, you don't get anywhere. The Germans have a wonderful saying. It says, Bescheidenheit ist eine Zier, doch weiter kommt man ohne ihr, which means modesty is a decorative adjunct, but you get much further without it. Yes, way back there.
You speak of the positively about the spirit of innocence. Yet in education, we teach toward expertise. I mean, how can you inculcate, or is there any way that you can teach or to enliven the spirit of innocence?
Well, I tell you, one way of doing it is to get fixated on something that other people aren't fixated on. Like, for example, in my case, it turns out to be color. You know, I sort of have a feeling that color liberates me from being ordinary and boring. That's why my pictures have such exaggerated color, or used to. Now, lately they haven't. Lately I'm trying to make my pictures and my hair coincide. See, color, like, for example, you know, people, they study these things like complementaries and primary colors, and, you know, and they have a feeling that they're going to learn something by doing that. Well, I mean, color is the essence of innocence, you know, because as soon as you catch yourself thinking about getting something accurate, you know, in terms of color, then you're right away on the wrong track, because you know, for example, that color is green. I mean, that grass is green, you know. So you take out your tube that says permanent green light, you squeeze it out in your palette, and you spread it around on the bottom of your canvas. Well, you're already on the wrong track, because you're not really using your eyes or your imagination. You're just using the label on the tube to give you guidance. You know, the same thing with the blue sky. So that the whole idea of being beyond words, you know, getting beyond words, getting into the realm of the imagination, That's all vitiated by these labels. Hmm? And then the people who put on an orange, and across from next to that they have to put on, what's the complementary of orange? Huh? Purple? No. Well, anyway, you know, whatever the complementary is, they feel a great obligation to use that in the painting. Well, that's a wrong thing to do, because it's not really, doesn't tell you anything about yourself, doesn't tell you anything about what colors really do to each other. You know, it just tells you that you've learned something from a color chart. And that's not enough. That's not enough. That has nothing to do with innocence of spirit. Yes?
If you're a subversive artist, are you automatically a good artist?
I think there must be some bad subversive artists. I mean, for example, there was an exhibition when I was a much younger person in New York by a guy named Greenberg, who somehow made piles of dog shit out of plastic. You know, and he had these various different kinds of dog shit, each one on a pedestal. You know. Well, I mean, that was very subversive, but it certainly didn't do anything for me. So I imagine that I would call him a bad subversive artist.
But why would you call him an artist?
Because he was in a gallery. Yes.
In your exhibition here, there's a portrait you did of Frank OHara. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that era in New York and how artists and writers interacted or whether they did.
It was a wonderful era. And the reason it was wonderful is that I was young in it. But it was a much healthier, it was really the art world, at least that aspect of that we all were interested in, young people, was a much more innocent place, because money didn't play any role in it. You know, even a great artist like de Kooning was just beginning to sell his paintings. You know, he was the king. We all knew that he was among the great artists of this period. You know, and the thing is that we all grow up knowing that the statistics for anybody becoming a great artist are very small. You know, each generation maybe has 40 great artists in, you know, that are going to be remembered. And the rest of us are all going to be soldiers in the ranks. But we all knew that de Kooning would be a great artist. And then there were the poets, the Frank OHara, Kenneth Gogh, Ashbery, you know, all these guys. They were very lively. They were terrific. They were very, and they all moved in a sort of in a group, and they interrelated with Merce Cunningham and the dancers, and then we all went to the concerts of the New York Composers Symphony Orchestra, and there was a conductor there who used to say, who used to make speeches before each piece. You know? So we had to listen to a piece by, who's the guy who used whistles and, not Cage, no, more famous, international.
Spike Jones.
Huh? Good. No, it wasn't Spike Jones. Anyway, it was some loud and unpleasant piece, you know. And after that was finished, this guy got up and he said, just now I want you to listen to a piece of music that you will all understand. Who's the guy who wrote Rodeo? A piece that you'll all understand. Aaron Copland. So Grace Hardigan, who was one of our group, is a famous painter in Baltimore now. She got up and says, "I want to hear something I won't understand." And that was the spirit which we all had. We sort of had the feeling that things should not be understood. In fact, Susan Sontag, who was a well-known writer in those days, she wrote an article called, what was it called? It was Try Not to Understand, or Don't Understand, or Against Understanding. That's what it was called. Against Understanding. And that was sort of the reigning spirit, that we didn't want to have a whole lot of cultural baggage to hold us back. Now, of course, we got a lot of cultural baggage. And the thing that holds us back the most, I think, is this idea of fame and money. And especially the idea of money is very deleterious to the cohesion of the art world. Because now I find out that everybody sort of groups themselves into hierarchies. Some people make like $1 million, they all hang out together. Then other people make 100,000, they all hang out together. And then a whole lot of people, the great majority, don't have a pot to piss in, they all hang out together. So there's no longer this great intermixture. When I was an art student or fresh out of art school, I gave a party, and there was, de Kooning came, Rothko came, Franz Klein came, all the big shots from the previous generation came to my party. And it was nothing special, it was just the way it was done,
Want a little party next week? I have a question.
Yes, please.
Two parts. Do you ever dream, paint your dreams, or have you ever dreamed that you're looking at someone else's paintings and you think they're much better than your own, and you wake up feeling envious and you realize that you painted them in your dream? You know what I mean?
Well, it's actually the Surrealists who painted their dreams. They mostly had wet dreams. As far as being envious of other artists,
In your dream, like you really painted it, but you didn't realize it until you woke up. You know what
You
I'm
mean
saying?
that-
Like you went to an art show and you go, wow, those are amazing paintings in your dream. And then you wake up thinking, wait, I did those in my head.
I dream a lot about paintings that I made that have nothing to do with what I really paint, which means that these are all wish fulfillment dreams. Okay, last two questions. Anybody who has something?
I seem to remember in the blurb that the newspaper had about you, that you were trained in some fancy color theory or some formal color theory.
Color field.
What's that called?
Color field painting?
Color field. Is that something that you really did, or is it not really important?
This is a piece of fake publicity. And the thing is, you have to guard yourself against believing the fake publicity that's around about you, because then you start, I noticed this about myself, that it's very, very dangerous to read critics, because they all want you to be something else from what you are, and then you believe them, like they say, for example, they say about me that I'm a colorist, okay? Well, I don't know. I don't think I'm a colorist, because color is the one thing about which I don't have to give any thought at all when I'm painting, And I figure what you have to give thought to is what should be, what you should be. I should be called a formalist, because I do give a lot of thought to form, to making the picture hold together structurally, and to make the color mean something structurally. but just to make pleasant color, I can do that with my eyes closed. In fact, I often do. Yes, ma'am.
You said that you are changing your colors to match your hair. I'm curious what colors you see in your hair.
Silver.
No, you don't see silver. What colors do you see?
I don't look at myself in the mirror. I'm not a narcissist. I don't know. I don't really know what color my hair is, except I know that I go to the beauty parlor every morning to have it bleached.